My background traditionally is in educational psychology with a focus on sports psychology. So really understanding the performance aspects and how people overcome challenges and really respond to pressure. I went to grad school in Florida State University, and after graduation, I thought about, right, I imagined I would be going right into traditional sports and working within teams, but actually took a little bit of an unplanned turn, which was I worked within the military for a long period of time. So at that time, the military was hiring for performance psychologists and really working within the individual units, developing pretty much like an athletic program for the military units. So I spent about a decade working with various branches of the military, developing cognitive enhancement programs, really developing the mental skills training needed for our soldiers and warfighters. But even then, there was still a background within sports that was kept calling to me, so doing a little bit of side work here and there, some speaking engagements, and eventually finding my way into esports, again, kind of unplanned. But it was really intriguing for me just because of the mental aspect of the sport. And really kind of finding use for sports psychology within esports. Yeah, I think, with my background working with a lot of different populations, I think the one thing that I noticed is almost every industry only looks at their industry for a lot of these solutions. I think we don't open ourselves broad enough to figure out that team building has, in a sense, like team cohesion has been around for centuries, and we don't learn that. We don't think that the other disciplines or other industries apply because they're not the same. So that's the biggest thing is when we break it down into the human level, and I think this is where probably gaming has really kind of allowed more applications of this because in any given team, there is such a global mix. So I could have a team that I have 5 players, and each person is from a different culture, different country, different background. So that was the one very unique thing of really being able to understand how team building actually happens and cohesion happens and what's really important. And I think that's an application that would be applicable across a lot of the businesses here. Yeah, I mean, I think any really kind of wide spurts games, I think games in general are really just beneficial. We talk about, like, I think it was even about probably a decade ago where a lot of the learnings try to become gamified to say, oh, let's gamify teachings, let's gamify learnings. And I think a lot of learning and development teams have also tried to gamify education because we know that learning is most important. But when it comes to gaming, I think we all have this, no matter what our skill levels are, it's almost like an equalizer, and that's probably the main draw. And if there's any games that are better than others, I would say ones that just have a little bit more complex nature, ones that we can also enjoy as a collaborative group that has a social aspect are really important. Because I think we're all probably guilty of those mobile games or iPhone games that are very addicting to play, but after a while it just becomes kind of one versus the machine, and we lose interest, it's too easy to master. And it's all it is just kind of killing time. Versus the ones that really cause us to kind of take time in learning, figuring out different strategies, trying new attempts. Having a little bit multiple skill levels versus just an infinite number of levels. Those are probably the most important ones. And then if I had a choice between like console or like iPad or iPhone or PC, PC games tend to be kind of the king just because of the coordination and the effort it's required. But all in all, I mean, some of the mobile games are becoming really, really kind of top-notch nature-wise and complexity-wise. I mean, I hope the attendees start to look at their environment as if, really kind of the gaming aspects of it. The beauty of, I think, the gaming culture is everyone comes with the same passion and the same goal. And I think, over the years, rightfully so, a lot of the businesses focused on we need the people with the passion, we need people with the right goals for their workplace, but it's not just about passion and goals. And I think the common mistake is people just stop with, oh, we have passionate people, we have goal-driven people. We should magically be able to have this wonderful environment and creating this right culture. But that's a given in gaming. And that's some of the things that I think we learn from gaming that we can apply to businesses is it's almost what do we do with that passion and the goals, and why is that really important, is what's the big takeaway. So figuring out the part of that should be a given, and then thinking about what are we going to use with that right, with the right people, with the right energy. How do we actually apply the daily almost habits in order to continue to fuel that passion and getting towards the goals. Yeah, I would say the big thing is feedback, and feedback and learning are probably the two really big key things. One of the biggest challenge I think, even with the remote work, is how do we connect? I think that was a big challenge for a lot of people. Is how do we stay connected when we went into remote? And now people kind of crave that social connection, but they also crave that autonomy and freedom. And I think for a lot of industries now, it's like, all right, we've shown the beauty of autonomy and freedom, but people are craving the social desire. So it's almost this duality of value conflicts that's now existing. And it's how do companies manage that? And I think, again, there's some practices within the gaming culture because gaming has been kind of that remote, but it's never, in a strange way, never lost out on that social connection. And I think it's because a lot of gamers are growing up with the expectation that this online, right, this virtual interface is the social connection. And they're so used to it. And so they don't have the contrast of the other. So maybe that's the advantage, right, that kind of our younger generation has. And that's the hard part is with the current industry that grew up in the social connection is physical only. How do we start looking at building more social connection? How do we transcend that? It can't be so transactional. And I think that's the big challenge with remote work is oftentimes, even when we try to be social, it seems so transactional. And so how do we get past that? So I think those are the big lessons and hopefully the big takeaways is how do we start making the social connections more virtual? And then also, how do we provide the right amount of feedback and how do we continue learning, which is probably the number one trait that gaming has and what makes it so addicting. Don't tell the gamers that they're actually learning things, but it is that never-ending, almost lifelong learning pursuit, which makes for the best games out there.